Welcome to the spirit world, answering your questions on angels, demons, and how the spiritual and physical worlds interact. And now your hosts, Debbie Georgianni and Adam Bly.
Well, hello there, and welcome to the Spirit World, and welcome to the August edition of our Mailbag show. I love this show because this is where Adam and I get to dive into the mailbag of all the questions, comments, concerns that you have as the Spirit World listeners, and we're going to try to answer as many questions as possible. So, no phone calls today, but please sit back and listen and really see if your question has been answered or somebody else's that you've been thinking about. Adam, we always begin with the St. Michael prayer.
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. St. Michael the Archangel, defend us in battle. Be our protection against the wickedness and snares of the devil. May God rebuke him, we humbly pray. And do thou, O Prince of the heavenly host, by the power of God, cast into hell Satan and all the evil spirits who prowl about the world, seeking the ruin of souls. Amen. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen. So this is your show. This is the August Mailbag edition, and Adam and I are determined to beat our record from last month, so we're going to try to answer a couple more questions. And just in case you're new to the spirit world, I'm Debbie Georgianni with religious demonologist and co-host Adam Bly, and normally we love to open the phone lines, and we just get it's an abundance, Adam, of phone calls all the time with people from all over around the world asking the questions about angels and demons and everything in between. So we thought we would gather up the mailbag once a month and we would just answer the questions. We'd group them together by subject matter, by topics, so that we could pretty much cover everybody's general concern. But I wanted to make sure that our listeners, Adam, knew that they can send in questions or comments for next month's mailbag show in September. So all you have to do, if you have something that's on your mind, or there's an activity or something that's happening in your household and you're not sure about it, you don't know who to talk to, you can't really maybe go to the parish and ask them, or the church and ask them, so you can ask us. We'll happily try our best to answer and bring you some peace. So the email is TSW, and TSW stands for The Spirit World at grnonline.com. So that's how you can send your emails in. Now, Adam, super easy. If folks want to go onto Facebook, all they have to do is like us at the Spirit World Podcast. And Adam and I are waving to all you guys on Facebook and YouTube and X. You guys are going strong. Thank you so much. And Rumble, thank you so much for lighting up the chats on the social media side of things. And you can post your comments there. And our wonderful producer, Tim, will grab those and put them in for the September mailbag show. We want to thank the Spirit World show team. You guys do a fabulous job making sure that every single Saturday we get these wonderful episodes out to the world. Thank you to the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network. Okay, Adam, so I kind of did all the housekeeping. I set the table about that it's a mailbag show. We're not taking any live calls today, but we'll take your emails and comments coming in on social media. And Adam, I have my list ready to go. I know you've got the first question that we're going to tackle.
Okay, here we go. Occasionally I get the experience that something or someone invisible is trying to climb into my bed while I'm half asleep, and I know immediately that it's a sinister entity. I always reach for my rosary under my pillow to strike down the enemy with prayer, even though it often becomes hard to speak, as if I'm being muzzled, but in persisting to pray mentally to our Blessed Mother and St. Michael the Archangel, the attack of the evil spirit always falls apart. The Lord restores my peace and I return to sleep. I'm active in my own media apostolate, occasional speaking engagements, writing about the Catholic faith, producing religious art, and evangelizing. It seems the more active I am in the work of God's mission, the more party tricks I'm being subject to. I'm not afraid, but I also don't want to be drawn into complacency and pride. Your thoughts and advice will be greatly appreciated. Thanks, and God bless your ministry. Okay. Well, this one, Deb, we have talked about sleep paralysis a number of times, and that's one of the possibilities here. This one is, I think, a common experience for people. You know, when I've been speaking to large groups of people, if you ask how many of you have had the experience of kind of waking up and being paralyzed for a few seconds or what seems like a minute, usually about 3/4 of the room will raise their hand that it's happened at least once in their life. Now, there's a few clues here that make me think sleep paralysis. And I'm not saying it can't be spiritual, but we need to start with the more common, kind of mundane hypotheses first. So we see that they are half asleep, number one, so there's a clue. And sleep paralysis can happen as you're entering sleep or as you're coming out of it. They reach for the rosary to strike down the enemy. Becomes hard to speak. So they're able to move their hand and reach for the rosary, but it's hard to speak. That sounds to me like when we sleep, by the way, what I mean by sleep paralysis is the brain kind of shuts off the motor system while we sleep because the brain can't tell between sleep and awake in terms of dreaming. So if you were running in your dream, your legs would be moving in the bed. So when we're fully asleep, our motor system is completely shut off. It sounds like the person was in the process of waking up. The motor system was working a little bit. They reached for the rosary, but they had trouble speaking. And that is typical with sleep paralysis, except in full sleep paralysis, you can't speak at all because you're paralyzed basically from the nose down. That's how sleep paralysis works. When they pray, the thing that's probably happening here is over 5, 10, 15 seconds, the brain finishes waking up, and then they're able to move and basically, get reoriented and then go back to sleep. So yes, prayer helps, it works, but also the brain is naturally kind of coming online and they're fully waking up, and so they're then able to kind of, settle down, get reoriented, and then go back to sleep. This is such a common experience, Deb, in the world, and so many people I've met have this nagging worry their entire lives that one time I woke up and I was paralyzed and I felt a negative presence in the room. I think it was a demon, and I've always wondered about that. I've heard that from many folks because it's a scary experience. And that other piece, Deb, the saying they were sure that there was an evil presence to it. That's really common with sleep paralysis. Partly because you're partly paralyzed or fully paralyzed, which is scary, and you're usually dreaming or half dreaming, and so it often becomes a negative dream. So all that being said, the final piece that makes me, lean towards sleep paralysis with this story is that it's when they're really active, they're pushing themselves, they're doing more in ministry, maybe they're traveling, maybe they're, maybe their schedule's a little challenging, and sleep disorders like sleep paralysis get worse when we're under stress. So all this makes me think, I would say lean towards that, and basically let it go and don't worry about it. Now, again, that all being said, there are cases where the demonic does come and harass people in their sleep, but typically different things happen than this. What are your thoughts, Deb?
Well, I found this email interesting because the gentleman, and we're keeping all the names private just because we're combining messages that have come in. So we just want to respect everybody's privacy in this area. But if you're listening right now, this gentleman who signed "Your Brother in Christ," which I think was so sweet of a closing of the email, talks about being more active in ministry. And Adam, there is a connection, I believe, when we are doing more for the Lord. It's not that it becomes more, well, it can become more difficult, actually. There's a lot of resistance from the other side, ways to kind of get us off focus, off the mark, and really tired and discouraged. How much of that could be playing into this as well?
It's very possible. Of course, we can't tell for sure. Just from reading this story, I can tell you that a lot of the pieces here fit with sleep paralysis. But that being said, I've been talking with people that are under really extraordinary demonic attack, and this kind of thing happens to them also in addition to that. So, waking up and seeing something scary in the room, feeling like you're being held down, that kind of thing. I'm just encouraging the folks listening out there that if you've had an experience of being kind of paralyzed, or you can open your eyes but you can't move, don't necessarily get really fearful assuming it's a demon. It can be sleep paralysis. And yeah, you're right, Deb. People that are moving towards working more and more for God, the enemy is going to try to, interrupt your sleep or harass you in some way in life. But again, that's if Jesus allows it. So he allows a period of testing, usually as you do more and more ministry work. But we shouldn't, we typically don't see that he allows that to be an ongoing thing unless somebody is dabbling in the occult or,
Right.
interacting with the demonic.
Right. But I do think it's a smart move that he does reach for the prayers and the rosary.
yeah.
And I think that should be for all of us. I know a lot of folks now go to sleep with the rosary in hand, and that's a beautiful thing. Or they have holy water near their bed, or they have prayer cards stuck underneath the mattresses. I mean, and that's to really just keep us in a very peaceful, calm place as we are drifting off to sleep. What do you think about all that?
Oh, definitely. I mean, that's good regardless. And we've mentioned this before, but let me just give out this tip. If you're having nightmares that you suspect may be spiritual, like, being caused by an evil spirit, you can take holy water right before you lay down to go to sleep. Wet your palms lightly with it. Doesn't take much. Just dampen your palms, pat your hands, and then pat your whole head down, pat your closed eyes, your ears, right before you lay down to sleep. And that almost always, at least so far in all these years, it stops demonic nightmares on a dime for that night. So you need to do it each time you go to sleep. So that's just a tip you can use. But absolutely, have holy things around you. Go to sleep holding the rosary. A lot of healings have happened when people go to sleep with relics, in their pocket or pinned to their shirt or something like that. That's when a lot of healings have happened from relics, is sleeping in contact with them. So, yeah, absolutely. We want to bring holiness into our rest just like we do during the day.
I think that is wonderful. And I have to tell you, Adam, a couple nights ago, I had a headache and I was getting ready to go to sleep. And I thought, Adam Bly would say, grab the holy water. And I did exactly what you just said. And I slept like a baby. It was amazing. So thank you for that spiritual tip there. Okay, you hear the music. When we come back, more of your questions on the August mailbag edition of The Spirit World. You can always send in your question for next month, tsw@grnonline.com, or better yet, like us on Facebook at The Spirit World Podcast. But please stay with us this entire very quick hour as we dive into your questions here. We'll be right back.
Do you have some major decisions to make in your life? Are you feeling lost and alone, not sure what path to take? Life coaching just may be the right option for you. Whether it's to practice accountability or create a better plan that works for you in life, we are here to serve with Christ always at the center. God's plan is always the best for us. We just may not be able to see it right now. Let us help. Secure your absolutely free consultation today at standtalltoday.com.
Unbelievers often reject religion because it sometimes causes conflict. They'll say, science will fly you to the moon, religion will fly you into buildings. Is this a rational basis for rejecting religion? The answer is no, and here's the reason. First, just because something causes conflict doesn't necessarily mean it's bad. For example, many wars have been fought over land. Does this mean we should do away with the right to private property? I don't think so. Second, the objection doesn't specify which religions cause war. It may belong to the essence of some religions to spread its message by the sword, and these we should reject, but it doesn't belong to all religions. So, to the question, should I reject religion because it causes conflict? The answer is no. I'm Carlo Broussard with the ready reason for Catholic Answers, Catholic.com.
The Spirit World continues with Debbie Georgianni and Adam Bly. We're not taking live phone calls today. Please email your questions to tsw@grnonline.com.
We're so glad you're with us on this mailbag edition of The Spirit World. I'm Debbie Georgianni with Adam Bly, and we are the co-hosts of this show that you're following every single weekend, and we are so grateful. The views just keep going higher and higher, and the amount of followers joining on Facebook keeps growing. The family's growing. We love that, and you're sending us so many beautiful comments about how you're learning and growing in the faith, and that's exactly why we started this show. So thank you, thank you, thank you, and thank you to all the affiliates that carry the show. You're doing great work doing that, and thank you to EWTN for carrying it across the network. But Adam, we're going to go back into the mailbag and grab another question. And this one comes in from one of our listeners that has a heritage that, you know, we get a lot of these comments, Adam, coming out of folks that grew up in Mexico. And so we want to really address this and get this to get this solved for everybody and bring clarity, because I know from being 100% Italian, Adam, that there were certain things that we did as Italians, and it's like, well, we've always done this. Grandma did this. Great grandma did this, and so you get very attached to the cultural side of things, and you feel like you're being disloyal if you go against what all of these wonderful relatives of yours have handed down through the generations. But there's a lot of problems and superstitious beliefs that are attached to these things, and Adam wants to clear this up once and for all, so folks can be at peace going forward and know that they are not being disloyal in any way, shape, or form. They're being spiritually responsible. Adam?
Yeah, Deb. So this one, you know, there's a lot of aspects to our discussion on this one, but let's go ahead and read it first. My mom would use a practice she learned as a child in Mexico, where she would get an egg and make the sign of the cross over the sick person's body while praying the Hail Mary, and I think Our Father and Glory Be. And after covering the body with crosses using the egg from head to toe, she then cracked the egg into a glass of water and placed it under the person's bed. Then in the morning the egg was examined, and people would look to see whether it was cooked or if there was many spikes of the yolk in the water, that type of thing, different patterns. This person wonders if instead of helping us, did it open a door to the demonic? Well, this is what is called syncretism, which is when we blend or combine, really, Catholic practices along with usually a folk indigenous practice or superstition of some type, or even folk magic, which this is a form of divination because you're using a mundane object like an egg in order to try to divine some hidden information about whether somebody has an infection, right? Or in this case, it references envy, which is hearkening back to the evil eye, the idea that somebody looks at us with envy about something we have, and that envy is essentially a curse. And so they're trying to divine both whether there's a sickness, but also whether there may be a spiritual illness here or a curse. So the church warns against syncretism, the combining of kind of local folk magic or superstition along with the faith, but also warns against divination, which is using things to get hidden information, which this is a form of divination. So it would also be called a superstition, which is kind of relying on, well, I think that the church would say this is just kind of whether the egg, whether the yolk spikes in the water or not, would be seen as kind of a random thing, kind of like people that might read tea leaves. It's looking for, in a superstitious way, you're putting faith in something that isn't of God, is kind of the bottom line here. So you're putting faith and trust in the egg and its behavior in the water, as opposed to in God. But what are your thoughts, Deb?
These things at the time, I think when people are desperate for an answer and they want to heal someone or help someone in their family, these customs, these traditions that are passed on, it has this I think effect on people where they just want some kind of comfort through what they're going through, and so I don't fault any of this. I mean, I'm speaking from my own family tradition of kind of some strange things that we used to do with olive oil and other stuff. I mean, you name it. But I will tell you, some of it worked. But anyway, that's beside the point. But it's interesting because I think when you're looking at the intention of it, Adam, it's not to insult God or not to try and get around what God wants. It's really to get healing or comfort or peace. So what do you say about that? Because I know that the intention of these folks, it's a good thing they're trying to do. It's just not going to be helpful for them spiritually. Why don't you address that? Because I mean, and I'm not joking about this. I have personally seen things like burns and stuff have been healed with using different olive oil and stuff. I know my uncle had epilepsy, and my grandmother used to put olive oil all over after he would have a seizure or something, and he would be near the stove and he would get burned a little bit. My grandmother would put olive oil on, and Adam, I've seen the most amazing. Now that's probably because of the antioxidant properties and the heal, the just the natural qualities of the olive oil. But I mean, these are things that we grew up with. So what do you say to that? Do we stop all those things when we've seen them? Now this particular instance with the egg and stuff, it seems a little bit extreme there.
Yeah, so I think you're bringing up something really interesting about all this is there are different examples of this that become increasingly obviously problematic. So using the olive oil, I mean, that could just be a traditional medicine, a treatment for burns. For instance, having an aloe plant in your house and snapping a leaf off and rubbing some aloe on a burn, that's not syncretism, that's not superstition, that's just basically plant level medicine that is substantiated by science. Like, for instance, the active chemical in aspirin comes from a tree bark that indigenous populations knew traditionally you chew this one particular tree bark when you've got a pain, and it's an analgesic, it helps lower the pain. So the olive oil probably has genuine properties like that. So it wasn't being used for divination. This story with the egg is kind of a little more moving towards divination and superstition than the olive oil is. But then let's take a third example, take it even further, and let's go into straight up mediumship and channeling of spirits, that some people claim that they're Catholic, and yet they charge people money to channel spirits with their body and supposedly have their dearly departed loved ones speak through the person's body or to them and relay messages, which is necromancy. So you can have different versions of this kind of blending of different things and traditions, but it can get darker and darker, where you're essentially playing with the occult, but you're just saying a few prayers before you do it. But that doesn't change the fact that you're playing around with necromancy in the last example that I just gave. Right. So yes, I understand, Deb, the intent is good, and people often simply don't know that it's problematic. But once your conscience is informed, you should probably just rely on prayer, and most importantly, go to the doctor. Rule out, the medical. Get something checked out. The church tells us to avail ourselves of medical science. Right.
Common sense, right? Mm-hmm. Use some common sense there. But we're keeping all of the names anonymous just because we're mixing everybody's emails together with the same under the same header of or under the same heading of the topic. And so this is important because this has been coming in a lot lately, especially from folks that have been raised in Mexico. They have been contacting us saying there's more and more of this happening, especially post pandemic, that people are going back to these old ways of learning things from their parents and great grandparents and saying, well, we're just going to do it our way. We don't trust what's going on out there, so we're going to do it how the way we were raised. But Adam, as you're saying, use common sense, do your research. If something is medically sound, then like the properties of vitamin E or vitamin C in olive oil, then that's good. But or aloe vera, okay. But if it's something that you even just know going through the practice seems a little odd, it probably is. Wouldn't you say, Adam?
Yeah, exactly. Your gut will usually tell you. And another thing you can do, check with your priest when in doubt.
Good idea.
You can check in with your pastor and say, hey, this tradition was passed down in my family. I'm not sure if this kind of crosses the line into superstition and syncretism. Can you help me talk it out?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, excellent. Okay, so Adam, I've got the next one because this has come in probably a half a dozen times, and so let's just address it in the next few minutes before we go to the next break. This came in from one of our listeners. Says, was watching a TV a murder show on TV. Can something attach itself to her from watching a dark show like that? Adam, go ahead and add any, sexually explicit, vulgar, terrible scenes, paranormal, anything. Add that to it because we've been getting a lot of comments that people are a little bit nervous about what they're taking in as their view and they're viewing as entertainment. Could demons be attached to that viewing episode?
Okay, so many saints have told us to guard our senses. Be careful of what you put into your mind. Be careful of what you look at, what you listen to, the things that you read. We have to live in the world. We're not able to withdraw from the world. You're going to see and hear things that are negative and all of that. But we're supposed to do our best to guard our senses. Now, why is that? Well, once you put something in your mind, it's there. It's not like you can take it back out. And, Thomas Aquinas explains to us that the way we are tempted by the enemy is the enemy will stimulate a memory or activate a memory that we have and then excite the passions. So if I suddenly an image of a great apple I had one day, crisp and cold and sweet on a hot summer day, and that image and that story comes into my mind of that apple and then excites the passions. Oh, I'm really hungry. I'd love to, go get that right now. Boy, that would be great to have that experience again. That's what temptation is. And so the more things we feed into our mind that can be used to tempt us towards sin, the more kind of potential ammunition we're giving the enemy. So particularly with things that are lustful or pornography, we need to be really careful because those movies play in your mind. Mm-hmm. And it's not always that it's a demon doing that. We're not saying that. But this is what Thomas Aquinas warns us about, that sometimes it is the enemy kind of stirring up those little movies that you've stored in your mind. So can a demon actually attach itself to you? Well, it depends on how dark and sinister the thing is, number one. Number two, it's how you engage with it. A person might watch something for research purposes for something that they're doing that's legitimate. Like, sometimes I would catch up on a particular movie if a case told me I watched this movie and I had these nightmares and it's in the context of a bigger demonic case. I may go watch that to see what they saw for research purposes. But if I watch it in fascination and I'm really wanting what I'm seeing in terms of a personal encounter with it, that is a form of invitation that can lead perhaps to something making an overture. I'm not saying you would become possessed just by doing that, but you're just starting to open the door to more of a relationship.
So again, what your intention is, correct?
Yes.
Intention, heart, that all that plays in. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to hold it right there. We've got more questions from the mailbag. And in case you're trying to call in because you're so used to having us live and we answer calls, this is a recorded episode of The Spirit World. We do it once a month to really make sure we get all the questions grouped up, gathered together, and we can answer. So that's why you got to make sure you tune in at least once a month for the mailbags to see if your question has been answered. So you can go on with your life in a confident way in your spiritual life and hold your head up high and feel good about the answers you received, so you can be free of anything that may be holding you back. So that's why we do this once a month. So if you want to send a comment or question in for next month, please do so now, because we start working on it a month ahead of time. tsw@grnonline.com. Or you can go on Facebook. Tim, our producer, picks up the comments right there at the Spirit World Podcast. Share this episode with a friend so you can help them be free of things as well. And we'll be right back.
This is a Messy Family Minute with Mike and Alicia Hernan. We talk a lot in our program about the messiness of life, but we thought we should take a moment to explain why it's important. We live in a broken, fallen world, and we're constantly trying to repair relationships and situations that have become, well, messy.
Why is it so important to recognize this? Because if we deny or ignore this reality, or try to control our situation and make it neat and perfect, we'll only end up frustrating ourselves and making the situation worse.
Family life is never easy. St. John Paul recognized this when he wrote, "There is no family that does not know how selfishness, discord, and tension can wound the family. But every family is called by the God of peace to have the joyous and renewing experience of reconciliation and unity restored."
Families need to embrace the mess, knowing that God is always calling us to reconciliation with Him and our families, and that He will give us the grace we need to get there. For more inspiration, visit us at messyfamilyminute.org.
Want some more joy in your life? Need some more peace in your day? Want to wake up each morning excited about life in a whole new way? Life coaching may be just what you need. We have a team of dedicated coaches willing to assist you in creating a plan for a better future with God as the focus. Jesus said, "I came for you to have life and have it to the full." So begin today with that abundant life. Visit us at standtalltoday.com.
The Spirit World continues with Debbie Georgiani and Adam Blai. We're not taking live phone calls today. Please email your questions to tsw@grnonline.com.
Okay, we are back for the August mailbag episode of The Spirit World. And Adam, as we were listening to those announcements on the break, it reminds me to share with our listeners that we are getting comments coming in. Folks are already wanting to sign up for the webinars that we have planned for the fall and for the winter on standtalltoday.com. So please, we'll keep you up to speed on when these are coming out and how you can register, and we'll also do it on Facebook at the Spirit World Podcast. But just you can just check on the website every once in a while, standtalltoday.com, and see when the next webinar, because Adam and I feel that we need to really work with folks and work with couples and those that are struggling with their adult children or in their marriages. We're willing to go out there and help in that way. And so we're preparing those, but they take a lot of time, folks. So I know you guys are super excited to sign up, but we're not ready yet. You got to give us another month or two and we'll be there. But we have this mailbag edition, and Adam, this next question that came in is very important, and it also goes along the lines of icons as well. And it's talking about Gregorian chant and whether something that you receive, if you buy if you see a nice something online and you're thinking, oh, this is Gregorian chant, I love this, I heard about this on Catholic radio, and you go and purchase it, and then you find out that it is so different when you get it, because you look at the back cover of it, or you download it or something, and there's all these strange names, all these things that you don't recognize, and you're thinking, is this authentic or not? So why don't you share the question, and then I also want to attach icons to that as well, because the same thing is happening with iconography. Sure.
So yeah, this is an interesting one. It was I think it was in the 90s that Gregorian chant kind of was used by some people that blended kind of New Age almost a soft rock music with Gregorian chant, and it exploded into kind of a popular awareness, and it became very popular. And then a number of monasteries around the world produced and released some CDs of genuine Gregorian chant. So what do I mean by genuine? Well, Gregorian chant is kind of the standardized chant of the divine office or the daily prayers for monastics within the Catholic Church. And it was it was kind of standardized by Pope Gregory many centuries ago. And it includes things like the Psalms, readings from the Gospel, litanies, all in Latin is the traditional way that it's done. And it's sung, and it's typically sung by a group of religious singing kind of in one voice, sometimes with a soloist, but in addition to that. But it is a form of prayer. And when it first came to the public awareness, it was not really in the form of prayer. It was being used because it's interesting and otherworldly sounding and soothing, but just different. And it caused, some musicians to get a lot of attention for a number of years. Now, there's two ones that are problematic. One is when it's blended into just music of some type, like secular music of some type. And typically, what's being done there is not a prayerful chant from recording from religious who are actually praying it as they sing it, but it's typically a choir, a secular choir that is trying to reproduce Gregorian chant just for the making of an album. The second, I would say that's definitely not really going to give you the positive spiritual benefits of genuine prayed chant that you hear with Gregorian chant. The second one is when there's just a choir where they're singing the proper Gregorian chants, but they're not religious people. They're usually not Christian. They're a secular choir. They're doing it the same way they would sing Hello Dolly or any other musical piece. It is simply something that they're singing. That's not as problematic, but if you're going to get it for the soothing aspects of it and the spiritual aspects of it, I would go out and find genuine chant recorded by monasteries, and there's female chant also. It's not just male, though usually what people get is the male religious doing their chant. I would get the real thing. Okay, so that's some of the background. Their concern are a couple things. Is, can there be imposters who claim to be putting out music that is Gregorian chant when it isn't? And they say there's some odd New Age material being produced linked with supposedly with Zen or other forms of meditation where they use specific frequencies that they claim are helpful. And they advertise it as, we're going to use this frequency and this, and that's going to have this spiritual effect on you or effect on your brain. And they're saying, this struck me as odd. Can you help me understand it? So that's some of the background to this, Deb. It's not that it's going to be a disaster if you have chant that wasn't recorded by religious, but here's the thing. You want to be sure that they're actually praying the Psalms or something that is a prayer versus they could be saying something else in Latin that has got nothing to do with prayer. So personally, I would lean towards the actual monastery produced material.
And the same goes for icons. When you purchase icons, make sure you go to a reputable a distributor and a monastery or cloistered nuns or something of that nature that you can trust. Because I will tell you, there are icons out there, same thing, and people are using those icons to get into a really deep prayer, meditation, and to focus. And some of these icons are being written by folks that have distanced themselves from the Catholic Church, and yet they're in a roundabout way, and I maybe borderline New Age. They're bringing that element in, And so that can be very, very, I think, problematic for somebody who's really trying to, set up a prayer table or some space, a prayer space in their home and fill it with very beautiful, blessed icons. And you have these coming from places that you don't know where this person's mind or heart is at. And then also, Adam, especially with icons, well, and even with music as well, people are putting a lot of effort and energy into it. They're writing the icons. So how do we know if they're not praying some odd prayer as they're producing this item? That could be dangerous too, correct?
Yeah. I mean, icons, I think you need to be even more strict about, because they are a sacramental. They are a holy image that is meant to be used as a focus of prayer and meditating on the scriptures, meditating on the figure that they're presenting to you. And they generally, come bearing all of those graces. And ideally, you would have them blessed after you get them. Of course, you can't sell something that's blessed, so you buy the icon. You ideally ask your priest to bless that. But if it was produced by somebody, let's say in some other religious system that maybe doesn't like Christians, they may have had some bad intent behind it. Maybe they're against the figures that are being portrayed, but they're doing it to make money, etc. So, and particularly, here's the other thing, Deb, just on a practical level, there's a number of monasteries and convents that make their living producing icons, and that's how they support themselves.
Right.
So it would be wonderful if you could find a genuine source where you're also benefiting a religious community if you're going to buy them.
And check out that religious community. Do your research. See who the fine folks are behind all these icons. So don't just purchase something because it looks good on the computer or it has the right words like monastery and stuff like that. Do your research, because I've done it many times. I've said, let me look at who's behind this, and I was pretty shocked at the people that are behind certain things, especially when it comes to Catholic items, especially. So it's important that we do put that extra effort in and do that good research there. Okay, we are going to take one more break, Adam, just so we can just get those final questions in. But when we come back, we're gonna clear up any misunderstanding about this, because one of our listeners was talking about seeing a light around sacred objects, and apparently they may have heard us say something or not. Let's just go over that again when we come back from this, because yeah, it is true. When you're in a very spiritual state, when you're praying, possibly you could see a light or something of that nature. We'll talk about it when we come back. This is our Mailbag edition. It's a pre-recorded episode of The Spirit World. Please share it with your friends and like us on Facebook at The Spirit World Podcast. We'll be right back.
This is Life News Radio. I'm Jim Anderson. David DeLeyden is the undercover journalist with the Center for Medical Progress who exposed abortion industry specimen collection, marketing, and sales. The latest releases, authorized by Congress, show the desperate need of prayer for abortion practitioners and others connected with the abortion industry. DeLeyden explained to Congress last month how, while he was undercover, abortion practitioners would tear up while talking about their work. And DeLeyden remains the scapegoat in abortion industry efforts as his attorneys make First Amendment appeals of roughly $25 million in judgments against him. A young woman has filed the first medical malpractice suit by a detransitioner against Planned Parenthood. The suit alleges irresponsible use of testosterone that led to mental health issues. She says a 30-minute consultation led her to make an irreversible decision to begin testosterone treatments. More cases are beginning to pop up around the country. This is Life News Radio. Persecution around the world has manifested itself through the centuries, but it is worse today than ever before. Aid to the Church in Need and its donors have been there to help since 1947, never abandoning the Church or her most vulnerable children. Will you stand up for your faith and accompany our brothers and sisters on their spiritual journey? Visit churchinneed.org. churchinneed.org. Assisted suicide critic Alex Schadenberg says the over 15,000 cases of arranged medical dying in Canada each year are being criticized in several new reports. There is new criticism of using MAID to allegedly treat eating disorders and also of Canada's growing numbers in suicide. One research study poses the question, does Canada's euthanasia law enable healthcare serial killers? For pro-life headlines delivered to your email address daily, sign up at lifenews.com. This has been Life News Radio.
The Spirit World continues with Debbie Georgiani and Adam Bly. We're not taking live phone calls today. Please email your questions to tsw@grnonline.com.
Okay, Adam, we're going to have to pick up the pace a bit if we're going to beat our record from last month. So why don't you read the question from one of our listeners, and then we'll dive into this understanding about seeing a light around sacred objects.
Okay. On a previous show, I heard you speaking with a caller regarding seeing a light, and he thought it may have been a sign from God. I believe you responded by saying that some signs of light can be demonic. Again, I may have misunderstood your answer. I have been seeing a light surrounding my crucifix every day for 2 years when I pray. It gives me such peace and comfort, but now I am questioning if it is a good thing. I was wondering if you could clarify my understanding of this light. Well, there's a few things, of course. If you're, seeing a light, depends on how kind of strong this is, your perception of this is. If it's very slight, that certainly could just be a spiritual consolation. It could be, that you're focused while you're praying and you're maybe picking up more contrast of things. But if it's a strong light, I would also say, just to be practical, check in with your doc on that. And the reason I say that is not to put down having spiritual experiences, but I actually had a case, I've talked about it before, where the people were seeing flashing lights in their house, assumed their house was haunted, but it actually was a tumor on the occipital lobe of their brain that was operable, and they were ruling out the mundane with their doctor, and it was good that they did. So I'm not saying this person has a brain problem at all. Just bringing up that whenever we have extraordinary experiences, it's good to rule out the mundane first. What are your thoughts on spiritual lights, Deb? Yeah,
no, I agree with that. But let's go back to what this wonderful listener had to say about that. If you see a light around a tabernacle, or you see a light around an image, or there's a picture of the Blessed Virgin Mary, and there could be a shimmering light that you may see. They wanted to know if that could be some kind of trick from the demons, or could it actually be that beautiful sign that you're saying that God can send us. Now, I will tell you, Adam, in the ministry work that I've done since 1989, I've heard this so many times. I can't even count how many times I've heard that, where people will say they've been in the chapel at adoration, and they will see streams of light coming from the monstrance, or I know from being on a pilgrimage to Israel, Jerry and I, when we were with the pilgrims, there were several, not just one, but several pilgrims when apparently during the Mass, Archbishop Aquila was doing the Mass in Israel, and when he elevated the host, there was just streams of rays of it almost seemed like bursts of almost fire coming from the Eucharist, and many people saw it. So is that and that, I mean, don't you have to take into consideration where you are at, what is happening? I mean, and I personally have seen things over the years in ministry. In my humble opinion, I would say those are clear indications that God is trying to share a beautiful gift with that person or those people that are present there. But I agree with you. If you're in your home and you're seeing, all sorts of lights coming everywhere, and you're not sure where they're coming from, you do have to make sure that medically everything is sound and what's going on. But tell us where we draw the line on some of these things?
Yeah, so it's extremely unlikely to be demonic if it's around a tabernacle or the host or a holy image, that type of thing, for two reasons. One, I can just tell you from a gut level, having looked into a lot of things and heard a lot of stories, good and bad, I don't think God would allow that. That's just my gut on that. Mm-hmm. Secondly, the enemy doesn't want to encourage our love of God or wonder at God. Mm-hmm. So the enemy wants to do the opposite. It doesn't want to draw attention to the tabernacle or give you a supernatural experience that's going to encourage you about, your love of Jesus and Mary. So that makes me think, it's much more likely to be positive if it's something spiritual going on.
Well, and let me just share something. Let me jump in there. That was so spot on what you just said, and I'm thinking back to all the times that I've heard or I've experienced myself, and they were during times where God did want to, I believe, just give that extra special gift to that person. Maybe that person was struggling with something, or that person was just wanting to make sure they were connecting with God, and so God provided that beautiful response. I would just caution folks not to constantly look for that. I'm not saying people do that, right. but sometimes we want to connect with God so badly. We want to know that God is there and responding to everything that we are going through and doing, and we want to make sure that he's paying attention to us, right? So we may just naturally look for things like that, and I think that's where it could be problematic, or maybe potentially the demons could do some of those tricks like was talked about on earlier, Adam. But I would say for the most part, when these beautiful little blessings come, just take them and hold them near and dear into your heart, and just know that God is present. Yeah, and generally when God provides consolations is one word to describe it, mm-hmm. or signs to us that are extraordinary. Generally they're at particular moments in life where it's given at that moment, at a choice in the road, or a place where we could choose sin or we could choose to persevere, as opposed to all the time. So typically the way God works is signs and consolations are rare and they're strategic, typically. Though other people, let's go to Padre Pio. I know, one of your favorite saints. He had lots of consolations and extraordinary stuff all the time. So I'm not saying it can't happen. Okay. That's about all I have on that one. Can we move on to the next one? We'll try to beat our record. Let's get to the one, beat our record. Yeah, Adam, I love that competitive spirit, Adam. Okay, let's get to the one that's similar with this idea of the nephew that died 4 years ago. Why don't you read that real quickly? Let's comment about that, because it's kind of along the same lines of looking for some kind of response.
So this person had a nephew who died 4 years ago. The nephew had dreams of God telling him that he would never have children and that God was going to take him home very soon. He then died in an electrical accident, and when the family prays the rosary, they mention him every time. When they forget to mention him, they hear a knock on the window behind Our Lady to remind them to pray for him. Wow. So I'm so sorry that your nephew died. I don't know how old the nephew was, but let's go to one of your favorites, Deb, Blessed Carlo Acutis. Mm-hmm. He knew from God that he was going to have a short life. Isn't that correct?
That's right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, so we know sometimes God does this, lets people know, either through their intuition or maybe speaking to them in a dream or in some other way. And here they are praying, and when they forget to mention him, there's a knock. Now, here's the thing, Deb, real quick. Souls in purgatory, down through church history, have been allowed to petition the living for prayer when God chooses to do it. Not all the time, and not through your psychic, not through your medium. They are allowed to signal the living that they need prayer. Typically, it's going to be priests, religious nuns, people that are equipped really well to pray and know how to pray for the dead. But it can happen with family too. Now, this sounds very much like a poor soul signaling their need for prayer to me. Mm-hmm. What do you think?
I agree, and I would also ask God to maybe stop that signaling of the knock, because I think you could get attached to that knock or waiting for that
try
knock.
to communicate with it.
Yes,
yeah.
yes.
You don't want to
So-
do that.
Right. So just pray and pray for all the souls in purgatory. Actually, we should do another show on purgatory, Adam, because we're getting a lot of comments and questions coming in on that topic, and we'll get to those in September. We want to thank Tim, our producer, and the show team. You guys did a great job. That'll do it for our August mailbag edition of The Spirit World. Please share it with your friends. Okay, folks, we love you guys. For Adam Bly, I'm Debbie Georgiani. Until next Saturday, have a beautiful and blessed week. We'll see you real soon.